everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. When people hear AI and customer experience, the conversation often jumps straight to chatbots, automation, or efficiency. But most and a lot of CX leaders I talk to are wrestling with another big question. How do we scale personalization and adopt AI faster without losing empathy, trust, and the human connection that our customers actually value? That's exactly what today's conversation is all about. We're here to talk about AI. Well, we're not here to talk about AI in theory or hype new tools. We're here to talk about what intelligent CX actually looks like in practice, what's working, what's not, and how teams are actually using AI to support both customers and agents in a very human way. Let's start by grounding us in a shared definition. When you hear the term intelligent customer experience, what does that actually mean to you? And what does that mean beyond chatbots and automation? We all know that great CX doesn't just happen without great agent experiences. So I want to talk a little bit about agent experience. How do you think can AI support agents in a way that improves quality and confidence without scripting them or removing the human element in their interactions?
The way that I look at that very much a lot of organizations are dealing with things like attrition, right, when it comes to agents and being overworked and things like that. And I think AI is a really great tool to help fight that and kind of combat that. And what I mean is AI can be leveraged kind of twofold for this when we're looking at humans in the loop. So one is to ensure that when tickets do touch humans or get to humans, the experience is kept on brand and sort of on point as to what the organizations want for their customers. Not that agents kind of going free and writing what they want is not necessarily a bad thing, but everybody writes differently. Everybody kind of uses different words, and I think AI is a really good tool that can sort of create this safe space to say this is the structure from which you as an agent should kind of work. So don't stress too much about things. I'm going to help you here. The other thing is making sure that processes are followed each time, every time, the same way. And I think that's a huge power and a huge benefit that agents can leverage AI for things that they might not know how to do. AI can come in and play the guide role where it's not fully autonomous, but the agents can still leverage that to better their own KPIs and better the KPIs that the business is measuring and improve on the customer experience.
Yeah. And jumping on the idea of AI as a guide, like AI can be a guide, it can be an assistant. We think about AI a lot when it comes to being customer facing and assisting the customer, but you can have AI assist your team. If you think about if I'm on an interaction with a customer and I have like an AI agent assist, I could ask the AI a question and have it search the knowledge base and give me that answer back instead of me having to go in and do that. It's going to save time. It's going to make sure that the information is accurate. So having it used internally, even as an assistant, to give that confidence that yes, I'm giving the right answer. I found it quickly. I'm not making the customer wait. Or even layering on other features like in the moment or proactive QA to where you're getting guidance on the call as it's happening. Whether we've been the individuals to call into a business, and I call it laundry lists, ask a laundry list of questions, or if you've been the person on the other end of the phone and someone's asked you two or three questions, you have to make sure that you're hitting all of those points and you're not missing that. And sometimes as people, we can forget one. AI can be a great assistant to say, you've answered two of the questions, this third one is still remaining. There are tons of different ways that you can integrate it and get coaching for your team real time in the moment too, as opposed to later. Some of you may still be doing this. It's still a method that's very much used where you take a QA team and after an interaction's done, they're listening to a phone call or going through a chat or a ticket, and then they're coaching the agent or the employee on what they could have done better, what they missed. If you have that happening live with AI, that's also a confidence boost. If you think about maybe the first couple of days that you've experienced brand new on a job, there's a lot of anxiety there. Am I going to the right place? Am I remembering the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? AI internally as an assistant or like proactive QA is a wonderful way to boost confidence and to enhance the human experience. Um, and it's just internal facing.
Would you
Yeah,
like
it's
to
it's
tell?
funny. It's kind of like Whitney, we've sort of gone full, well, we haven't gone full circle because it's much better, but I don't know if many
Not
people
yet.
remember like Clippy. Like do you
Mm,
if you
Yep.
I
remember
remember
Clippy from
Clippy.
back in the
Hmm.
day,
Yeah.
that was a useful tool when you were building a table. Clippy would proactively jump up and say, "It looks like you're building a table, right?" Or and like
Yep.
that's a great example to your point of how AI for agents and keeping like it can help enable those individuals to get ahead and like make the right steps and right actions without having to worry about the anxiety of doing something wrong.
That's an interesting point that you mentioned there, Whitney, was proactive QA. Like how that's done. Would you like to flesh that out a little bit more? Like how that's done? What's the process that proactive QA goes through to actually execute and to assist the agents?
Yeah, so you can actually layer AI, you can layer a bot in and have it actually assist the agent. It normally shows up. Sometimes it can be a floating panel that's in a browser that you can use. Sometimes it's attached to your actual telephony instance. And what you'll do is some of them have color coded instances at the top where it can show you caller sentiment, your sentiment, and you can watch that change and fluctuate. You can see text come out with real time feedback for you should suggest X, Y, and Z. You can ask it a question. Did I answer each of the questions? It can come back and give you that information. Sometimes in tense situations as an agent, you do your best to try and remain calm and professional, and an AI can come in and say, this is your sentiment. Let's make sure that we even that out a little bit. And while normally too, as an agent as well, you can gauge how your customer's feeling and how it's changed over time. You can still see it on the call. Did the customer start out really elevated? Are they starting to calm down? It can just be a good real live coach in the moment that you can use,
Yeah.
and it's right there front facing for the agent to see.
That's pretty amazing. And I have a follow-up question to that. And probably not really related, but kind of a follow-up question about how we can assist our agents and how we can safeguard their experience with AI as well. And I'm curious how this also plays out in Zendesk. But I want to know from the both of you, what's a clear sign that AI is actually helping versus hurting the agent experience?
Yeah. A good sign that AI is helping is you can see it in metrics. You still want to measure your AI the same way that you would want to measure your team. So that's going to come through, but you'll see it in your CSAT scores. You're going to see it in your first response time, your time to close, your deflection rates. All of those are really good examples that it's working and that it's working well. If those metrics are going up, it's being integrated appropriately. You can also see it in the retention of your team members too. If AI is making your job easier, to Alessandro's point, either the burnout goes away, some of the stress and some of that retention goes away. So you retain your team members longer, which is great for any business, for any customer base, because then you have people that really become the experts. They're passionate about what they do. So there's just a couple of ways that you can see that it's working. When it's not working, it's fairly obvious as well. An actual real example of that, you'll see your team members, instead of becoming content experts, they become search experts. If you overcomplicate it, it can have the opposite effect. A real thing that I've seen before, and Alessandro, you might have mentioned this earlier, is when things get too scripted. I've seen clients come in and they've got 500 macros. If you have 500 macros, you don't have content experts on your team, and your AI isn't actually being helpful. All you're doing is training them to figure out what prompt to throw in to throw at your customer, and then they lose the ability to critically think. They lose their product knowledge. That's when you start seeing robotic empathy statements. I think we can all sometimes think of interactions where you've seen like this is scripted, like this isn't genuine. You can tell by the wordiness or the language that's used, or it's not on brand voice. When you start seeing things like that, that's an indicator that the way that you're using it is actually hurting the experience and not helping.
Yeah, I think another one, just short and sweet, is adoption. Like, if the humans in the loop aren't using the tool, it's safe to say it's not working as well, beyond everything that Whitney's saying, which is super important as well, right? But one of the best things about, being human is when we like something, we go back to it and we continue to use it. And that's a value point in terms of saying, in addition to what everything that Whitney's talking about, which is extremely important, but it's a really big indicator to say that we've set this up right. People are going back to it, people are using it and clicking it. And if the metrics that Whitney are talking about complement the adoption being seen by humans, I think you've got like a really good setup where AI is really helping your agents. If you've got nobody clicking the button, safe to say it's not a good setup.
Indeed. Those are telltale signs. Well, the common thread I'm hearing here is that the best AI gives agents more space to be human. And wow, time just really flies. I have to acknowledge our audience and remind our audience that if they have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Whitney and Alessandro will be able to answer them right after the my questions. Okay, so we talked about agent experience. We talked about personalization, and as teams scale AI, trust and responsibility become really critical. So I want to focus a little bit more on that. What do you think does responsible AI look like in real CX operations, especially as teams scale? And where should humans stay in the loop as well?
I think it's a really great question. I think this is going to be very much looked at on a case by case. And what I mean by that is, I think there are certain situations where AI it needs to take a sort of a step back and play an assisting role. There are certain use cases and examples. I can give a financial institution that I was working with that wanted to limit any kind of, questions that would open up, as an example, tax implications to their users. And I think that's a valid thing because, again, we don't know AI in terms of Zendesk and our AI solutions in the resolution loop. We don't have this open-ended AI. It's not that it doesn't think, but we don't allow it to free think and answer questions because we don't want to open up those potential Pandora's box of issues, right? So I think really this is where organizations have to understand, going back to what Whitney alluded to, which is this journey of crawl, walk, run. It is not where AI can't be helpful. It's more about how do you want to apply AI within these different scenarios to be helpful. And I think taking an approach, and I work with a lot of customers that think about chatbots and go, oh, well, if we're going to launch a chatbot, an AI chat, we don't need the human in the loop component. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think there's a complementary aspect between full automation at top of funnel, if we can call it that, and partial automation when those top of funnel inquiries kind of get moved through to the human in terms of it. The one thing I will say though is I do think that AI needs to be sort of in terms of customer support because of the delicacy of what those situations are, needs to be sort of kept structured and not guarded in that it can't be open-ended, but within certain constraints that are built in. Great example, right, is AI. We don't have to tell at Zendesk our AI not to be snippy with
Mm,
customers, as an example, right? We've sort of coded that into it. But if I mean, depending on how we've all chatted with ChatGPT and other tools, it can get snippy when those guardrails aren't there. Like a great example in a CX space where that is what we would consider responsible AI, right? Is us having that framework already built in and already being leveraged by customers is a really key to having a responsible AI product map, a responsible AI implementation within your kind of system, if that makes sense.
absolutely. Whitney, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think he covers the vast majority of the points. I think I would just echo one of the things that we talked about before is that responsible AI also means that you have to check, audit, and inspect. So not only just making sure that the AI is not accessing or pointed towards information that could have PCI implications, financial implications, but just making sure that you're consistently going through auditing the pathways, auditing the rules that are there. If you're adding something in new, making sure that there's a testing phase, looking for error rates, latency, checking to make sure that accuracy isn't degrading over time. Because as you scale and as you add in more things into the AI, it's so important to make sure that you're protecting that foundation and then all of the information that feeds into it.
Awesome. Well, I just want to remind people in the audience, you can drop your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Whitney and Alessandro. I have one last question, and then we can field questions from our audience. What do you think is one thing that CX leaders should focus on in the next year to keep experiences human?
I think if there's one thing for them to focus on to keep experiences human is to look for ways that AI can support your people, not supplement it. We've talked about it quite a bit throughout, but that's a good place to start. What things can actually help your team members and help your customers? And if you need a place to start, that's the best way to go. Look for things that help, not necessarily supplant them.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say I agree. I think it's sort of a combination of look where the state of your organization is and sort of start to determine, is it a human AI component that I'm more focused on, or a full autonomous chatbot component that I'm more focused on? And not, opening up again the floodgates. Having a very structured plan for AI adoption and implementation is really key to success in terms of the customers that I've seen. So I think that that's really key. And I do want to go back to the point I raised earlier, which is AI has facilitated for regular folk like myself and other individuals the ability to get very creative in terms of driving really nice experiences. And I think that that's something that we shouldn't shy away from in terms of AI. We have the ability now to experiment and test in a really kind of unique sandbox environment. And I think that that's like something CX leaders need to really think about is how do we break down or go beyond the regular CS and CX frontier, and how can we leverage AI to do that? But I do think what drives that needs to be what are the pain points? What are the metrics? What are the things that are happening within the organization, within your organization, that need to be focused on in terms of leveraging AI to improve?
Awesome. I'm sure that our audience has uh, picked up a lot of golden nuggets from both Alessandro and Whitney. And we actually have questions coming in from our audience. There's the first question we have here. Let me read it out. And any of you can take this. Do you notice any difference in the customer support metrics that we track now compared to before agentic AI?
Yes. I would say there's a few added. I don't see a difference in the traditional ones. I think they're still being tracked, as Whitney alluded to earlier, and they're still being measured. But what we are seeing with agentic AI that we are tracking now are things like not understood rate, as an example, right? So these are situations where chatbots or AI is not able to understand the context of what's being asked. That's a really important KPI to measure or to track because it directly impacts the experience, as an example. So I think that that's a really key one. And the other thing is we are tracking in terms, here at Zendesk, we're tracking on the back end and we're surfacing this to customers is it's important for you as administrators and the business to understand how are the AI tools that you've implemented thinking. So having that transparency into understanding why an AI chatbot responded the way it did is something that's super important to drive the optimizations. In a traditional, if we compare that to yesteryear, we didn't have that, if that makes sense. We weren't tracking why do agents do this. We were sort of trying to guide agents to say, this is the right path. But we have to think about an entire logic brain LLM now that needs to be analyzed in order to ensure that we're optimizing on that.
Yeah, and I think on my side, you mentioned that you defined it as like not answered. I'll typically see that on my end as what's the AI resolution rate? What percentage of the questions that came through could the AI handle versus what could it not? What could it appropriately deflect? But then we're also looking at things that kind of layer into that, like how long did it take the AI to solve it? Like what is its close rate? How many questions
Yep.
did somebody have to ask the AI to get it to give it the response they wanted? Or what was that path that it took to where the AI was eventually not able to answer it and it went over to an agent? And we referenced it before too, and this also kind of ties into resolution rate, but just accuracy as well. Accuracy,
Yeah.
speed.
Awesome. That's a lot. We have another question coming in. Uh, the question's where should a CX team start with AI if they're worried about moving too fast or getting it wrong? It's interesting.
I think normally if someone's worried about moving too fast or getting it wrong, I'm going to assume that it's in the context of it being visible to your customer base. Um, if that's correct, I'm interpreting the question the right way. I would say start by applying it internally. There are so many great data-driven AI insights that can come from leveraging these tools, or even things that we talked about before, things that assist your team. So an agent AI assist or a QA tool, something to where if something does go wrong, it's internal. You're able to see it. You've got the human component active of checks and balances that are there. But also too, when you're layering in an AI, there is a whole process there. Nothing's ever perfect. And Alessandro, I think you use the term design it to fail gracefully. If it does, there are checks and balances that you can put into place there. But I would also echo too that that's why health checks, discovery sessions are so important too before doing that. So as long as you're following that process and you're just not just dropping it in, and you're being responsible with it and you're putting in those guardrails, you'll see a pretty good success rate with AI implementation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Whitney. Lissandra, anything you want to weigh in on this? All
That was
good?
perfect. I'm
I think
going to take that answer. That was a great answer.
yeah, absolutely. I actually have a question that I think you would want to take, or both of you. The next question from our audience is, what is one common mistake that you see companies make when rolling out AI in CS?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
answer it with one word, which is data. They don't review the data or the content that they have that's powering their AI solutions. It is the most imperative thing to like a successful AI launch, which is, content drives the AI solutions. If the content isn't clean and if the content isn't structured right and isn't accessible, then the AI tool that's feeding off of that content will not work either. And I think a lot of companies overlook the importance of going back and reviewing content and keeping content clean and keeping content fresh and pertinent to whatever questions are being asked. That is the biggest mistake I see companies see. And when we do see, which I'll say very lightly, failed launches, which we don't like to see. Part of that is the health checks weren't done. A big part of that, but the other big part of it is um, they've overlooked the importance of let's take a week or two and look at our content and see where we
Mhm.
can optimize that because that will drive a direct correlation to your success of AI implementation.
That makes a lot of sense. After all, data is king.
Yeah.
Um, we do have time for one last question. We have one more question from our audience. And thank you, Ella, for the shout out. One last question. I would say, I think, do we have other questions? Let's take one more question before we close this out. I think we have time for just one more. How should training programs evolve when agents are now managing AI assisted conversations rather than fully manual ones?
This is a good one. And what I think this question is asking is what do you do when your customers are chatting in using AI to help them with their questions or their problems when they're interacting with you? And I would say the solution to that is making sure that your team members are content experts in your product, in your business, in your policies. You really have to make sure that that stays and that there's a lot of focus on critical thinking skills, and strategies that you can use to assist your customers. Um, a customer can use AI to message, to have conversations with you. And if you don't know your business, it can be difficult to navigate that interaction. But if you do, and you're empowered to make those real-time decisions or judgment calls, then that's what I would suggest that you need to focus on, which are things that training programs should be doing anyway. But I think it's even more important that you really focus on making sure that your frontline team members are masters of your business and masters of your content.
Absolutely. Wonderfully answered. Um, Feel free to jump in, Alejandro, Alessandro, if you have, okay, all good. I see that.
Perfect. Yeah, no, great answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think it's time for us to wrap up. It has been a really fruitful discussion. And what we all heard today reflects the work that Peak Support and Zendesk are doing every day, helping teams move beyond AI experimentation and really toward real human-centered impact. So, intelligent CX isn't just about choosing between AI and people. I think that's the common thread, and that's the conclusion we can draw from today's discussion. It's about using technology thoughtfully with the right strategy, with the guardrails, using it responsibly so that both customers and agents have better experiences with AI. And if today's conversation sparked questions about how this could look in your own organization and how this could work for your teams, we'd love to continue the conversation and we'll be in touch after this session. So I want once again to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Whitney, and thank you, Alessandro, for sharing your expertise on this session. And I'll see you again in the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.